Nelle Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, Amen, Gloria Dei. Vidicame Deus et Deus causa meam de gentilem sancta benedictus et Introducem tuam et veritatem tuam ipsam deduxerunt et deduxerunt imantem sanctum tuum et interdata tua. Et introducam Fidevati vincitera Deus, 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 quale Christus et Sanctimia et Correctum Est. Spera in Deo, Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritus Sancto. Sicut et principio et nunc et saecula saeculorum. Amen. In tuo laudare Dei. Aiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini. O Fideo independenti vete variis et virgini vetum liberati angeli vetum latisse. Sancte Sanctus 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 Perfecta venimis cogitazione devota per te. Mia maxima culpa. Dio precavete maium Sancte Virgine vetum et eramate angeli vetum latisse. Sancte Sanctus 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 Sovave cum et domine nostro. Miserere Tui omnipotens Deus. Amen. Confiteor Deo omnipotens Beata non baptista, sanctis apostolus Petro et Paul, sanctis et Filii Patri, purificatis purificatione verbor et culpam et maximum. Io prego Beata Maria Sancta Virgin, et in camera Beata non baptista, sanctus apostolus Petro et Paul, omnes sanctus et Dei Patri, ora pro mea Domini nostris. Misericordis universal Deus et divisis peccatis vestis peccatoribus et vita eterna. Illusions nostra Christiane et remission peccator nostrum et benedictum Dei misericors Domini. Deus conversus et cabissus. Let us to it Ostende Domini misericordia tua. Et salutare tuum. Domini exaltationem mea. Dominus vobiscum. Amen. Misericordia Domini plena est alleluia, verbo Domini celi firmatis sunt, alleluia, alleluia.
exultate ius in Domino rectos decet corodatio. Gloria Patri et Filio Spiritus Sancti, sicut erat in principio et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Misericordia Domini plena est, alleluia, verbo Domini celi firmatis sunt, alleluia, alleluia. Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. Gloria in excelsis Dei. Litera Pax Unibus, benevolentatis, laudamus Te, benedicebus, adoramus Te, glorificamus Te. Gratias agimus tibi quater magnum gloriam Tua. Domine Deus ex celestis, Deus Pater omnipotentus, Domine Filio Unigenitus Iesus Christus. Domine Deus agnus Dei Filius Patris, que de lis peccata mundi miserere nobis. Que de lis peccata mundi suscipere peccati nostra, que celeste excellam Patris miserere nobis. Odiamus solus sanctus, solus Dominus, solus Sanctissimus Iesus Christus, cum et Sanctus Spiritu in gloria Dei Patris. Amen. Dominus vobiscum.
Et spiritu tuo.
Amen. Deus qui in filii Tui humilitate iacentem manum existi, fidelibus Tuis perpetuam concede letitiam, ut quos perpetua mortis requisti casibus gaudiis facias per fruis obiteris. Per eundem Dominum nostrum Iesu Christum Filium, qui convide regat in unitate Spiritus Sanctibus per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen. Lectio Epistolae Petri Apostoli. Carissimi Christus passus est pro nobis, vobis reliquo ex exemplum, ut sequamini vestigia eius. Qui peccatum non fecit nec inventus est todos in nome eius, qui cum malediceretur non maledicerat, cum pateretur non caminabat, tradebatur tempedicantis eius, qui peccata nostra ipse perdit opere suo superlibus, ut peccatis mortui sicie vivamus, cuius libere sedenti estis. Eratis enim sicut oves erantes, sed conversi estis nunc et pastorem et episcopum animarum viscarum. Alleluia, alleluia. Conioverunt discepuli Dominum Iesum in factione panis, alleluia. Ego sum pastor bonus et coniusco oves meas, et coniuscum prime, alleluia. Dominus vobiscum. Sequenus Sancti Evangelii secundum. In illotam predix et Iesus pares eis egus sum pastor bonus. Bonus pastor animam suam dat populibus suis. Mercenarius autem et quinam est pastor, cuius mens sunt oves proprie videt lucrum venientem et imicit oves et fugit, et lupus rapit et dispergit oves. Mercenarius autem fugit, quia mercenarius est, et non pertinet etium Deovibus. Ego sum pastor bonus, et coniuscum meas, et coniuscum prime. Sicut nobit me pater, et ego agnus pro patre, et animam meam monopo obibus meis. Et elias oves abeo, quodam sunt ex ovi, et ilas opotet me educere, et voce meam audiat, et fiet unum mobile, et unus pastor. Laudetur Jesus Christus, in the Father and Son and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Our Lord just said, I am the good shepherd. What is a good shepherd? Then he described what a good shepherd is. Traditionally, this Sunday is dedicated to preach about vocations. Oftentimes, I've said it many times, people are saying that this crisis that we have today is a crisis of vocations.
If we say that, it means God failed. Because what is a vocation? Essentially, vocare in Latin, it means I call. I call means I heard a voice. And our Lord said it. The sheep heard the voice of the shepherd. That's why they recognize the shepherd. But it means these sheep were able to listen to the shepherd. And that's the problem nowadays, is who is listening. If we say that this is a crisis of vocation, we admit that God failed. It means because he's not calling anymore. This is not the case. We can make a lot of distinctions in what a vocation is. Essentially, God calls people from the flock to segregate them, as St. Paul said, to serve the flock. If we have a large flock, we need as much as shepherds to lead that flock. If we have a tiny, tiny flock, then we have few calls. Before, and so this is still the case, but nowadays we don't see that anymore. So if we look at what is alive inside a Benedictine monastery, when I have people, they come to me and say, Father, I think I have a religious vocation. Then I ask them, what is the school that they like? What type? Ancient, like the monks, or modern spirituality, like St. Vincent of Paul, St. Philip Neri, and all of these new religious orders. When I say modern, it's past 16th century. And some people, they say, I'd like to become a monk. And then we say, would you like to become a monk for what is the reasoning behind? And if they say, I would like to say Mass one day, I want to be a priest, then do not enter into a monastery, because this is not what God wants. We enter into a monastery to become a monk. Then we let the abbot decides who and how much of the monks need to be priests. Because in a monastery, they live secluded in a cloister. So this is a flock in which you have an abbot who is the shepherd. That's why he has a pastoral. And so this pastoral is because as a bishop, he's leading his flock. Then his purpose, his task, is to make sure that every single monk has the sacraments to live the monastic life, which is a life dedicated purely to God 100% of time. Then that's why before, we see that in a monastery you had maybe 50 monks, and then you will have 7 and 10 priests only. Nowadays we see that after the reform that came in the 19th century, we see that most of them are ordained priests. But that is not the spirit of the rule. By saying that, this is what I want to make the point is God is calling. But God gives to people priests if they want priests. And I've said this is not a crisis of vocation because God is still calling. But are we listening first? It means it's like in a marriage, So marriage preparation has 3 steps. I said that in my homilies many times. The remote preparation is when we have children, to give them a good example. Parents giving them a good example. To make them sure that they understand what marriage is, a Catholic marriage, which is in fact the indwelling life of the Blessed Trinity. God is love. So I'm showing love. And I learn love by being married. So that is the first step. Another remote preparation is the preaching, the catechism that priests are giving to whoever is about to get married. It means teenagers who are thinking about a state of life. Parents still involved, but clergy more involved by preaching, showing them example, and making sure they understand the rules and they understand the moral, the doctrine of the church, not imposing them a burden that they don't understand and that the world is fighting against them. Flirting, for instance, why we don't flirt, and all of these questions. And then the proximate preparation is the preparation that is with engaged people just a few months before the wedding. So you see that marriage preparation, it is not 6 months or a year. It's longer than that. And it is the same thing with vocation. We have to make sure that God can call people. How do we do that? We have a remote preparation. First is to understand what is a priest. Catechism. Then it is also to pray for vocation. How many of you pray daily for vocations? How many? Then to promote vocations, to make sure that people, they understand. And how do we promote vocation? By having a priest around, showing to the children, the boys particularly, that a priest is a man called by God to serve them. I like to say that anecdote that I had with a few of you in Pismo Beach once. We went to a restaurant, and then I asked to the waiter, it was an Italian restaurant, and so that Parmesan, where this Parmesan is coming from. And the man looked with me with big eyes, like, what are you talking about? But so then he went and he came back, it's coming from Italy. Obviously, it's coming from Italy. This was not the answer I was expecting exactly, because he had a special flavor. So, but then the people, so some of you were there, and so he said, "No, Father, easy. We don't do that in the U.S." I said, "What are you talking about? We don't do that in the U.S." By doing this, I'm asking a simple question to someone who has a better knowledge than I do, because we don't tip waiters in a restaurant to drop a plate on the table. A slave can do the job. And we don't tip slaves. And I don't want to be served by slaves. I want to be served by someone. And a typical is a waiter. A waiter is someone who knows by heart the entire menu that is offered to people. It means they can give you, yes, so this fish is freshly fished this morning. And so the chef today is going to make this. Okay. So they explain every step because they are able to do so. Of course, that restaurant has not a large menu and nothing is frozen. Let's talk about a good restaurant. So then I'm asking to something to that person who's serving me, because to serve is, I have a knowledge that you don't have, and you need that knowledge to make a choice. So service is, I offer to you my services, my competence in this area, because you don't have that knowledge. And that is the service. That is to serve. When we study, if we take any job, a mechanic, a lawyer, a physician, they get a degree. I know in the US we like to put the degree on the wall, but what is the purpose? To have a nice frame and to show to the people that I got this degree from this prestigious school? No, not at all. It is just to show that I have that degree to serve whatever job I do. A mechanic, a baker, a butcher, a physician, an engineer. I am here to serve you because you do not have that knowledge. When I was Boy Scouting, Catholic Boy Scouting in France, this is also the purpose of badges. You acquire a new skill that you put on your shoulder to show to people that I have skills in that area. And then I can serve you. And as a leader scout, I never gave a badge, even if that boy had the skill to do it, if I wasn't sure that he had a good spirit, that he will put that badge just to show to people that he is ready to serve. And I've known some boys who were skilled, but I refused to give them because it would just be pride. And no, we don't do such a thing. So in vocation, it is the same thing. A priest has some knowledge that you don't have. That's why he's serving you. And that's why you need that priest. Because he is the only one who has on his hands the power to open the gates of heaven. And that you cannot do that by yourself. You cannot open that door. He can lead you to that door too. That's why he is here to serve. Then everything has to be, if we understand truly what a priest is, like I said, and any other job, the way maybe tomorrow when you will go to the grocery store, you will think differently about the people who are serving you. And we are very disappointed and frustrated when we see that we ask a question to some people who are supposed to serve us and they don't have that knowledge. A priest is there to serve. So it means we, from that moment, have to have that duty to understand what a priest is. How do we know what a priest is? By prayer first, because a priest is just an instrument of Jesus Christ, the high priest. So if I want to understand what a priest is, I have to understand who Jesus Christ is. And then I learned Jesus Christ by reading the gospel first, studying my religion, looking at the priest, participating in the life of the church, like I said last week. Everything that makes a remote preparation for boys to maybe think about it. How do we become priests? We become priests because we have seen priests. If I tell you a story, when I was a little boy, about 10 years old, I wanted to become a priest, but it was impossible for me. Because the priest was an old man, not able to do many things. Then for me, he said, you must study for decades before becoming a priest, because I only see old priests. Until I saw a young one. And then said, well, this is possible then. I can do it maybe. We don't become priests because we see a man saying mass at the altar, vested nicely, preaching, saying things. That, if you consider that is enough to become priest, it's already gone, you won't have a priest, and most of the people who think that, we see that we don't have priests. We're in a shortage, because if we think that, we think poorly of the priesthood, actually. And then that's why we become lukewarm. That's why we cannot nurture anything in our lives. And that's why, for us, church becomes just a hobby. I go there on Sunday, that's good enough. And I hope with that, I will be able to go to heaven. No, this is not what life is about. We become priests because we have seen priests, because priest is accessible. And that was a big, big, big change in my life when I was a teenager and I had access to priests. Young priests. Able to talk to them, able to camp with them, able to spend time with them. Even the first time I had to talk to a bishop, for me it was like a crazy big day. A bishop, successor of the apostle, talked to me. But that man was accessible. It was not just that nicely man saying mass with a dozen of clerics around him, with this big mitre, crosier, giving blessings around. No, no one would like to become a priest. Just think that. You become a priest because you have seen one. You've lived with one. You are close to one. There is no secret. It is something in a flock. If you look at the flock, a community is dead or alive. It's alive because every single one, sheep in that flock, knows the other one. It is dead when we just ignore the other one. That's why I insist many times since you have known me here that we are not united. And we need to be united. And if we don't know the name of the people sitting close to us in the pews, it is my mistake. I'm guilty of it. So that is a remote preparation. And the less remote, I will not say proximate, because proximate is not your job, actually. But the less remote is to pray. To pray daily for vocations. The other one is to become a saint. Because if I become a saint, it means I am close to the high priest. And being close to the high priest makes me understand what a priest is, and then I value the priesthood. We need priests. In this time, we see that we are lacking priests, not because they are not available, but because they are not accessible, because of this crisis in which we are. And then, and I shared that with you since day one, I thought of it. I said, maybe it is time for us to appreciate more what we took for granted yesterday. Because yesterday, it's gone. Now we're living today. In the present day, what we assume was granted, it is not anymore. So we're going to appreciate more. And this is a time we take in every evil a good things from it. That's an opportunity. How can I grow? How can I grow in my faith during this crisis? What Jesus Christ wants to tell me through that crisis. Then I will appreciate more the priesthood. Then I will be able to nurture, harvest vocation by being good examples, good parents, good people. And then all of these young boys, they should ask them. If the boys never ask themselves, am I going to be a priest? Am I called by God to become a priest? How many boys, how many men ask that question themselves? You know, I see around a lot of people, teenagers that I know, that even women, they are getting married. Wherever they are, they're getting married. I see that they are very happy, but I am not that happy because I don't see anyone entering into a monastery. I don't see any nuns. And that makes me sad, very, very, very sad, because I cannot be a priest without nuns in the monastery. It is impossible. I know some bishops, I won't tell you where, so they received that call from the apostolic nuncio, saying, the Holy Father called you to become bishop in that diocese. Okay, they accepted. The first thing they did, they opened the book. They looked into their diocese. And they looked in the diary, how many religious? None. And so that bishop had no religious. First thing he did, as an appointed bishop, he went to monasteries, he called monasteries, begging the abbot, begging Mother Superior to send people to start a foundation in his diocese, because he said, if you don't come, I will fail the job that is given to me by God. So, yes, we need priests, but remember, behind priests, we need nuns, monks who are sacrificing for their lives. Remember that Saint Therese of the Child Jesus is the patroness of missionaries, a Carmelite who spent her life cloistered. She is the universal patron saint of missionaries. Why is that? Because of what she was doing. Secretly, close to God, praying for each and individual missionary. She even had correspondence with missionaries in Vietnam, in Asia, especially praying for them, that they will remain strong, even in case of martyrdom. And some did, actually. We need to ask ourselves, what do I do to promote vocations? Okay, I'm not saying that if you have boys, to push them. This will be the worst thing to do. This is not your job. You're not calling your boys to the priesthood. This is God's job. Don't take his job. And this is a mistake that I hear often, that people, they say, my boy will be priest, my boy will be priest, my boy will be priest. And I've seen boys actually entering into the seminary and leaving the seminary being desperate after 1 or 2 years because they never wanted to enter in the seminary. But they have been pushed by their parents. And they didn't want to disappoint their parents, and they are even more sad after that. So no, don't take God's job. Whatever it is, you pray secretly that if God calls your boys, you will do whatever is possible to ease God's job, to make sure that this boy will be well prepared to become a priest. You build the net for the call. Maybe the call won't happen. Maybe it will happen. But in any way, you build that net. And if your boys are not going to be called, God will use these prayers for someone else to become a priest. And I said to you oftentimes, I am a priest. It's amazing to think about that, and sometimes you wake up in the middle of Mass and you realize that this is you saying Mass. But oftentimes I say, I am a priest because someone sacrificed his life for having a priest. Maybe someone lost in the Middle East who couldn't have mass, couldn't have a priest, and was begging God to have a priest. And then a priest was called, a man was called by God to become a priest. So in this time, this crisis, we have time to think about that. We have time to meditate. We have time to pray, to ask God, what should I do? I am available, whatever state of life in which I am. What should I do to do such a thing? That is also the task of the Good Shepherd. You know, they said that in the book of Proverbs that the seminary is the eye of the bishop. So the bishop is as precious as his eye is big. It is not the quote exactly from the book of Proverbs, but this is the idea. So an eye is precious. So for a bishop, the seminary is as his own eye, as precious as it is. And I heard a bishop saying to me that they don't have vocations. They don't have many vocations. Some bishops that I know, they never ordained priests in their life as bishops. But what they were doing to get priests. I know some others, they arrived in a diocese, it was no seminary, nothing. The first step they did is, we opened the seminary. People were saying, you're crazy, you don't have vocation. I don't care, we open it. And these people, they were courageous people. And this is what we need. We need good shepherds that are going to be courageous to open these doors, to push where it needs to be pushed. In order that for us, we get priests, because we all need priests. Every single one of us need a priest. To have a priest on our deathbed, to have a priest accompanying us from day one to the last breath. We need priests. It's up to us to make sure that we are building the net for God's to call people in the Father and Son and the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Credo in nome di Dio, Padre omnipotente, Pai correggere televisibile et invisibile, et in nome Dominum Iesu Christum, ex Patre et Naturam omnia secula, Deum de Dio, Lumen de Lumine, Deum verbum de Dio. Genitum non faetum consus non sedem Patre, per omnia affecta sum. Qui portenus solines et portenus tam salutem decimi decimus. Et incarnatus es Spiritus Sanctus, Maria Virgine, Crucifixus etiam polibus Pontio Pilato passus et sepultus. Et resurrexiter sia dies secundum scripturas, relascenet in scium sudet et extram patris, et iterongat purus cum gloria vidicere vos et puntibus, cuius regnum verificamus. Et in Spiritum Sanctum Dominum et vivificantem, qui ex Patre Filio prococidi, qui co Patre Filius in redovatum et glorificatum, qui locutus est per prophetas. Et unam sanctam catholicam et apostolicam ecclesiam, Confiteorum baptismam remissionem peccatorum et expiatur resurrectionem mortuum, et vitam venturis seculi. Amen. Dominus vobiscum.
Et Spiritus tuo.
Amen. Deus, Deus meus, a te denuce vigilo et domine tue argumentus meas. Alleluia. Orate fratre. Omnipotente. Per omnia saecula saeculorum. Dominus vobiscum. Sursum corda. Ase segamus in Deum nostrum. Prediletus tuas et cum salutare te plenam Domini omni temporis et in potentissimum gloriosus spiritus compassion nostrum. Immatus est Christus. Ipsiem perus est status que absolit peccata mundi, cum autem nostra moria de destructi, et vita per resurreggio de reparare. Et ideo cum angelis et archangelis controlis illuminationis, umque omni militia celestis exercitus et nulla vietre panis in defini diciamus. Sanctus, 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 Benedictus que benedicti Domini Domini, Hosanna in excelsis. Nuestro Padre católico. Per omnia secula seculorum. Oremus, facetis reveremus uniti et divina institutione formatemus dicere. Pater noster, qui es in cieli sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra. Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie et dimitte nobis debita nostra. Sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentatione. Per omnia secula seculorum. Pax Domini sit semper vobiscum. Agnus equitulis peccata mundi, miserere nobis. Agnus equitulis peccata mundi, miserere nobis. Agnus equitulis peccata mundi, nobis pace. Domine nostro Dio, Domine nostro Dio, Domine nostro Dio.
And the charity of omnipotency, the absolute integration, the absolute error, the absolute non-baptism, something supposed to be
Miserável és omnipotent Deus, dimissis peccatis vestres, peccat vos vita eterna. Deus ansem absolvis celam et remission peccatum omnes voluntas et nobis omnipotens et misericordias Deus. Et genus ea peccatit peccata mundi, Domine nostro Deus, et intra subtectum meum, sed anto dic verbum sinibitur ad mea. Domine nostro Deus, et intra subtectum meum, sed anto dic verbum sinibitur ad mea. Domine nostro Deus, et intra subtectum meum, sed anto dic verbum sinibitur ad mea. Papus Dominus Iesus Christus, Papus Dominus Iesus Christus. Et grosso pastor bonus, alléluia, que nos conversions, que nos confiner, alléluia, alléluia. Dominus vobiscum. Alleluia. Questa nobiscus humus omnipotens Deus glorificat in Christo et gratiam consequentes in tuo sanctam requiem. Per Dominum nostrum Iesu Christum Filium tuum, Predicum vivit reniat in unitate Spiritus Sancti Deus per omnia saecula saeculorum. Dominus vobiscum. Ite miseris. Venit vos in reverenza Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus, Dominus Vobiscum, in Iesus Sancti Evangelii secundum Ioannem. In principio ad verbum et verbum amata Deum Deus erat verbum, et erat in principio omnia carisum facta sunt desire factum est factum est. In ipso vita erat et vita omnibus hominum et lux in tenebris succede et in Quid omni sus ad Deum provenere ratio est, et venit in testimonium et testimonium per Deum et manerat in Deus et testimonium per Deum, miracus miracul illuminatum namum in venit in modo erat et mundus aesum factus et mundus in in propria venit et suica et recepiunt, quod cotatum recepiunt eum dedit et studet et philosophia, iso penantium in eius, per examinibus, neque exunt et caris, neque exunt et viris et examintis. Et verbum caro factum est et vita vitis, et vidibus gloria meus, gloria quasi ad perpetuitatione. Regina Celi et Ave, Alleluia. Regnai memoris Dei, Alleluia. Resurrexit seculis, Alleluia. Ora pro nobis Deum, Alleluia. Gaudet et Virgo Maria, Alleluia. Quies rex et Dominus Dei, Alleluia. Deus per resurrectione Filii Tui Domini nostri Iesu Christi, bonum vivifica la vita tuus, restacus amus per eius et Virgin Maria, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Divinum auxilium et semper Christum. Amen.